As a Microsoft partner, you're always looking for the path to how do you build that crisp relationship with the people that carry the bag, right? Yep. And I think this is going to be that path.
Microsoft's purpose is in service of your purpose.
And again, 2024 is the year that partners come out as the leading edge of the spear on finding this buyer intent.
You show up to every meeting and demonstrate why you are relevant.
Every day I have to force myself to make sure that I'm taking one step ahead in terms of my own learning.
That flywheel of success is where you will build momentum, and that momentum will continue, and then you feed into the other systems to say, this is what we did, this is how we did it together.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Guide to Partnering. I'm Vince Menzione, your host, and I'm on a mission to empower every individual, organization, and partner to achieve their greatest results through successful partnering. Much of the discussion we're having is around the tectonic shifts, this decade of the ecosystem, the increasing dominance of the three hyperscalers, the changing buying behavior, and this marketplace moment. Today, I'm going to double down with a friend who's leading the charge at Microsoft around marketplaces and channel sales, ecosystem-led growth. Jason Rook. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Vince. Thanks for having me.
It is
excited to be here.
Great to have you here in Boca. So, little side note for people who have been listening for 7.5 years, Jason was episode 13, like one of the very first podcasts we did. We were back, I was back in the home office, or I was maybe the third bedroom at the time, and recording on Zoom in those days, and had you on. You had been in a role, I want you to talk about your career, but you had been in a role at Microsoft, and then you had left and you joined a fast startup, an organization that was really growing around Azure. That was like a big thing back in the day. We were just starting to launch into the cloud in a big way in those days.
And with that first conversation was all about kind of that growth, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, people still didn't really know what Azure was in some cases, right? So it was fun.
And we got to work together in the same organization at Microsoft on the U.S. partner team. That was when I brought my public sector team over to U.S. partner and became part of the leadership team. And you were running this high growth group. You had been invested in, I believe, from the Azure teams. Yeah. This was at the point where we were kind of almost like the black belt type approach. We were doing this fast start into Azure, into cloud. And we didn't have a lot of partners at the time that understood cloud, that understood Azure. And you were leading the charge. Yeah,
you think about it, we had no partners at that point, right? Because it was this point in time where everyone was confused, and the initial reaction was, let's go get the biggest partners, the more traditional Microsoft partners.
That's right.
And they weren't on board.
No,
right? It was
they weren't.
And so that team, what we discovered, the phrase that someone coined, we don't know who it was, but the born in the cloud partner.
Born in the cloud, I know.
Yeah. Yep. And that partner, that was what accelerated the Azure growth. And, some of those partners, lucky enough to be a part of that, some of those partners just had rocket ship exits. It was a lot of fun. You look around and I always kind of joke, it's kind of like SharePoint. At one point, nobody did SharePoint, and then everybody was a SharePoint partner. And now everybody's an Azure partner, right? So,
and at that point, we were trying to help organizations understand from the best of the best. You had left Microsoft. You had gone to an organization that was really considered the best of the best in class and was on that rocket ship. Yep. You were part of that rocket ship. And tell us a little bit more about that journey and then how it led here.
Oh, wow. So that was, it was a lot of fun. That rocket ship was a rocket ship. And it was at a time when, I think it was interesting because we had customers that a little further down the cloud path because there's some other competitors that were kind of leading the way, and Microsoft was catching up, and we had just this ecosystem of partners. And the story was interesting because Microsoft's product was more app dev focused. You remember we made this pivotal moment when Azure became kind of an infrastructure platform, and then everybody got on board. But in those early days, it was really about bringing the expertise to the table, along hand in hand with the Microsoft account teams to close. In those days, what were mega Azure deals. Today, those deals are a monthly payment. But at those times, right, those Azure deals were really significant. And that's what kind of crossed the chasm for Azure.
I mentioned yesterday at our event, our executive summit, that like $1 million quota for Azure was considered, that was like the business quota for public sector when it first came.
Yeah. The company that I joined, 10th Magnitude, they were involved in one of the first Azure deals, and it was like a $250K deal.
It's huge.
And it was unheard of, right? That was, I think you remember in Lincoln Square, we had these big poster boards of like the top Azure, one of the cloud partners, so that people would know what a partner looked like. And here's the partner that closed a $250K deal. And that's like mind blowing.
I remember those banners. I didn't remember those in the office back in the day. Wow. So you came back to Microsoft almost 2 years ago. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, well, if you think about the work we were doing at 10th Magnitude, and I kind of start the story in roughly 2019, there were two things going on at 10th Magnitude that were pseudo marketplace related. So the first of which is that, our bread and butter was really helping customers get to cloud. And one of the sweet spots for us were ISVs. You had ISVs that were either startups or ISVs that had a real legacy on-prem infrastructure or architecture.
Yes.
And we would go in and help them get to cloud, right?
Get to cloud shift back in the day.
A lot of lift and shift. In the ISV space, it was more app dev, DevOps focused, more redesign, but we were doing quite a bit of lift and shift as well. And we noticed as we worked with some of those, and some of those ISVs were like even in the M12 portfolio, and they started to tell us, hey, we want to transact in cloud marketplaces. And Microsoft starting to push us that direction. We want to do that. And one of those M12 ISVs, if you don't know, M12 is the Microsoft VC fund, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask for that.
Yeah. So one of those ISVs, we actually helped them get their app into marketplace. And we thought, wow, there's a business here for us, but we weren't equipped to help people with the publish aspect. So we started to strike up a relationship with, of all people, Taco.io, right? And we're having conversations with John and the team there, and as well with the Azure Marketplace team, all the way back in 2019 about, hey, could we be kind of the front end of this ISV motion, right? To get the ISV to cloud, knowing that one of the exit paths for that ISV was to get to cloud marketplace, and that's where Taco would pick them up and run. So that was the one big thing. The other thing that was really interesting is the ISVs that we worked with were really pressing us on, will you sell our stuff? And back then it was HashiCorp and Chef Software. It was really no longer around the same scenario, New Relic. Those ISVs were coming in saying, hey, you guys do a great job with design, implementation, support, but the whole relationship gets really rocky when we have to bring in another reseller to sell.
Yes.
And so if you've ever been around a pure play ProServe organization, going from ProServe to I'm going to sell software is an incredibly heavy lift.
Very heavy.
It's heavy. And,
very different motions as well.
And if you're in a high growth organization like that, there's, a list of 10 things you're going to spend capital on. Selling software, very bottom, right? And so we started to see, hey, in our CSP business, and what a lot of people don't know is even back in 2019, you could sell ISV apps through Marketplace on CSP contracts, which blows some people's mind, right? But we were doing it, and we would tell the customer, hey, you're going to buy some Azure from us. You want some SendGrid? We'll add that to your, we'll add that to your CSP bill. And we started to think, this is the path for how we're going to sell software in the future.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, COVID hits, 10th Magnitude exits. We kind of, the world changed a little bit. I was at another hyperscaler doing some really interesting things, and
research project. Let's call it a research project.
Yeah, it was an awesome experience. It really was. But a friend of mine connected me with Yvonne, who did your show a couple episodes ago.
I love Yvonne Bench.
And Anthony Joseph, who keynoted for us in Dallas. And
another amazing leader.
Hopefully we repeat that.
Yes.
So I was having conversations, and Anthony's message was, hey, this marketplace thing at Microsoft's being kind of rebooted, a real shot in the arm, and it's going to have some explosive growth.
Yep.
But if you look at the big puzzle of marketplace, there's a puzzle piece missing, and that's channel partner. Absolutely. So come over here and help us figure out that puzzle piece. So that's what I'm doing now, is working on how we get the channel partner, and we use channel partner broadly, right? Think of it as non-ISV. How do we get the non-ISV partner and those 400,000 partners to go sell ISV apps?
So I'm just going to say, not because you're sitting here, I think it's one of the most important roles in Microsoft, because we talk about the mid-market, the huge opportunity in the mid-market. We talk about the marketplace moment, and it's really driven not because of Microsoft, Amazon, or Google, so much as the changing in buying behavior, all the things that are happening, right? The dominance of the hyperscalers, the cloud commitments, the role of marketplaces, the decision-making process changing, and the ability to consume against that. But right now, it's just a one-to-one between an ISV or an SI and a Microsoft, Amazon, or Google, right? we forget about this buying process, and we forget about the influence strategy that's happening. What the customer is really doing is they're not directly buying from these ISVs necessarily.
Right.
They're buying through their trusted relationships, their existing agreements, the people that have been surrounding their organizations for years and years and years, these trusteds, and they're not necessarily somebody at the ISV.
Yeah. If you look, you think about every analyst slide, we talked about that a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
The numbers are big, no matter who does the slide, right?
That's right.
But that ISV marketplace opportunity number, it's big, but what you don't see on that slide is the channel's a part of that, right? And the channel part's not going to go away.
It's not going away.
None of these top 100, 300 ISVs are all going to say, we're out of the channel business, right?
Nope.
Nobody's going to say, oh, I'm going to replace my channel and build an entire sales force to go do this, right? The channel is going to have value, and that's not going away. It's probably even going to get bigger in the marketplace.
That's right. The big guys aren't going to rip and replace. The small ISVs, they need scale.
Yeah.
So they need the partners, and that's figuring out. So, you hosted a session yesterday, you, Greg Goldcamp, and Sanjay Mehta from Tackle on stage talking about the staggering growth of cloud marketplaces. I was hoping we could dive in a little bit here and talk more about your session.
About my session yesterday. Yeah. So first of all, it was just a fun conversation, the way we approached that, right? We just kind of got together as a group of folks on the phone and said, okay, what are you hearing? What are you hearing? And then we kind of broke it out into topics. I thought the flow was really good, but the gist of the session was, these are the top things that we hear from execs, whether it's a customer exec, a ISV, or a partner exec. And it started all the way with, we get in the room and some people will say, is marketplace for real, right? Like, where are we at on the hypometer? And so we talked about, yes, marketplace, absolutely for real. You can see it in the numbers. Then we talked about, okay, it's for real, but what is it, right?
Yeah.
And we still spend a lot of time on that. And then we talked about, once you believe it's for real and you know what it is, then what do you do about it? And that's where the conversation gets really interesting.
So what are you doing to accelerate and capture this opportunity?
So me in particular, in the role that I'm serving today, I think the focus is on this channel partner sales model. And the way that we kind of think about marketplace, we think about marketplace as a product. And within marketplace, within that product, there's a number of features. And there are really kind of two core features that enable a non-ISV channel partner, we'll call them, a channel partner to go sell a marketplace or an ISV app through marketplace. And the one is the CSP motion. I mentioned that's been around for a long time.
Yeah, I remember when we instituted CSP.
Yeah. And that ability to attach that third-party app has been there only recently. And when I say recently, 2.5 years ago, February 2022, we launched the private offer functionality with that. So now you can do a custom deal. The channel partner can earn margin. The customer can pay below list price, all those types of things. And then in last July, we launched what we call multi-party private offers to U.S. customers only. And I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about that expansion today.
Yes.
But that functionality allows any Microsoft partner to sell an ISV's application through Marketplace into an enterprise customer, where it gets really interesting, because in the enterprise space, we have customers that have cloud consumption commitments, right? And they can use those commitments to purchase ISV apps. So, and when I say any partner, it really, we designed that feature with an incredibly low bar.
Yeah.
Because we want everybody to participate in this motion, right? When I say all you need is a Microsoft AI Cloud Partner Program ID, formerly known as an MPN ID, which you can get one of those.
I have one.
Yeah, you have one of those. So you could go transact the deal today. We should do it. Let's go decrement somebody's Mac. Yeah.
Well, what's important here too is that it means that Microsoft's going to do the direct billing to the customer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't have to collect. Microsoft's going to do the collections. Microsoft's going to pay you on defined terms. I mean,
and they're going to pay you on time.
On time. Yeah. That's not new, right? Anybody who's a Microsoft partner, one of the reasons you love to be a part of BIF or SIF or any of those programs is, while there's lots of hurdles and lots of work, the check's going to come on time, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And it might come early with a discount.
Yeah.
Not that we know any of that. So one of the concerns I hear from partners is that the marketplace opportunity is clear for ISVs, but maybe not so clear for the SI world.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I'd say it's true everywhere, very true in the Microsoft ecosystem. If that can help.
Why is that the case?
Well, I think there are a couple of things, especially the Microsoft ecosystem, the traditional Microsoft partner, the one that you've had a lot of them on your show, don't sell software. right?
That's right.
So there's an investment they're going to need to make. Now, earlier I said the bar's lower with marketplace, but you still have to invest, right? You still have to build that muscle and the strength to go do that. And so a lot of those partners are saying, hey, it's not clear to me that that's worth it for me and what I need to go do to be able to transact software, right? So I think there's part of that. There's also some confusion around, hey, I'm a partner and I want to sell my professional services and an ISV app, right? And so that's not necessarily functionality that's available yet. That's a feature that we're working on. We're actually in private preview to allow that systems integrator to sell their, $100,000 Azure migration along with, $1 million of New Relic or whatever the ISV product happens to be.
Which is what the customer wants, right?
The customer wants one-stop shopping. They want it super easy. The partner wants friction-free, easy transactions without a lot of Microsoft tax on top of those, right?
And when is that feature and functionality coming?
So we're in private preview for that right now for the US, Canada, and UK. And so at some point we'll launch into general availability, and then that will follow kind of the MPO expansion across the globe as we get to that point.
So as you've been rolling out this MPO program, I think since the start of the fiscal year, maybe a little bit before then, right?
We for general availability, start of the fiscal year.
Start of the fiscal year. What have you learned along the way?
Couple things. I think one of the things that we kind of expected this, but I've been shocked at how lopsided the managed versus unmanaged is. And I think
interesting.
I should clear that up.
Yeah.
In the Microsoft world, you have all kinds of partners. Everybody can participate, but there are those partners that are managed, right? So they've got an FTE of some type or a vendor of some type that looks after them within the Microsoft space. And normally those are the ones that drive significant amount of revenue. They're participating in all the programs. It's PAL, it's CSP, it's solution assessments, whatever it happens to be. They're participating in all those things. Those are not the partners that are driving the majority of the MPO deals. It's the Microsoft partner who is a reseller of some other type of software as well. And I always kind of frame it up, hey, it's the Microsoft partner, back in the day when we were kind of getting started, is that partner they were the partner in town, and then they built a Cisco business, or then they built a VMware business. Then all of a sudden they're no longer the partner in town and somebody swooped in and took that spot. Now what's happening is we need that partner to come sell Cisco or VMware or Red Hat or any of those products. And they're swooping into enterprise customers because they're experts at that sale. They're experts at that product deployment.
And that customer.
And they know that customer inside and out. Yeah. And they're swooping in and selling these deals. And now the account teams are like, wait, where did you come from? Right? Like we've rolled through 5 reps since the last time we interacted with you. And those partners are selling marketplace deals, and they're not small. They're huge marketplace deals. And all of a sudden, they're on the radar again. And I think we knew that would happen just because of the nature of marketplace, but the pace at which it's happened and, the win wires that we see and those types of things are pretty staggering.
And are they bigger partners or smaller partners? Smaller partners.
All smaller.
So this goes back to the trusted relationship piece, right? The 7 seats at the table. These are the organizations that you as a customer, and you might have a Big Mac agreement with Microsoft. Yeah. And yet you trust this local relationship to.
Well, because you trust that local relationship because they're experts in Tanium or VMware or whatever that app happens to be, right? Now, granted, the big guys are doing well, but it's staggering how good the little guys are doing. It's really refreshing to see, right? Because we've got this 400,000 partner ecosystem. You often wonder, like, hey, where does everybody play?
Yeah.
And people are finding a new path.
We are thrilled to announce our partnership with InPartner Software, the world's leading provider of partner management technologies. Serving over 4 million partners globally, InPartner excels in delivering cutting-edge solutions for partner relationship management and partner marketing automation. Their robust platform offers essential tools like program compliance tracking, customizable partner journeys, and comprehensive business planning. These features empower partner teams to swiftly transition from program design to achieving maximum value. InPartner is dedicated to supporting partner ecosystems everywhere and continues to innovate with new modules like Analytics Studio, designed to help track and maximize the ROI of your partner program.
For more information, visit InPartner.com. I think that's fascinating about this, and I don't want to digress, is that Microsoft had this concentration at one point when I was there around these large account resellers and then became LSPs. And it was a concentration of all of the revenue up to a few. And what you're saying is it's spreading out. It's thinning out along the long tail a little bit. Maybe not quite the long tail, but a little further down to smaller organizations.
Well, specific to marketplace.
Specific to this marketplace
specific to marketplace. Yeah, there's just, because there are things that other partners can do very, very well that now drive a marketplace sale, which then drives Azure, right? And and that's a really unique opportunity at this point in time. And I mentioned, like, we set that bar very low to be able to participate because we wanted to see that happen. I think it's an interesting, you think about Microsoft, right? The waves of opportunity, right?
Yep.
There was I
was going to bring this up with you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was looking up, I kind of came at the wave of, which was, the Windows 2000 AD, the mail wars, right? The notes versus Exchange, and that was a wave.
Notes versus
and then there was
Exchange.
the .NET days, and then SharePoint and Azure. I think there's a window right now for partners to step into this marketplace motion. It's not going to be a wave like some of the other waves we're probably going to talk about today, but it's a window of opportunity to kind of reinvigorate your Microsoft relationship and reinsert yourself into some of those things that you may have wanted, like deeper relationships with account teams, the ability to sell with and across Microsoft.
Yeah.
Yep.
So new opportunity areas to engage with Microsoft selling teams.
Yeah.
Being first in an area, same way that your other organization was with Azure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You alluded to geo expansion. You talked a little bit about moving from the US market into the UK, Canada.
Yep.
Tell us more about that.
So we don't disclose a lot about the geo expansion. And I think the reason why, and you can kind of look at how other hyperscalers have rolled theirs out as well, is that it's not a technical lift. It's a lot of tax and regulatory, right?
Yeah.
So there's just
It's
ongoing
the commerce engine below it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's ongoing conversations, but we do know that we are on track to launch in Canada and UK. That previous one really well. So in the summer timeframe, that'll go live there, and then we'll start to look at what the next geographies are after that. It's obvious if you think about where we want to go. We want to go everywhere, right? But there are definitely markets that are larger. That are a lot of opportunity. There's definitely some of those markets are also highly complex from a regulatory perspective, right? Yeah. So as I think the plan, we've done a much better job over the last 2 years of kind of putting this roadmap out. The next probably roadmap, it's always the Inspire timeframe, which I know we can't say Inspire timeframe anymore because that's kind of gone. But
for
in
those
that
who
July
don't know and decode, it's July 1st is the beginning of the new fiscal year in Microsoft, and Inspire is usually mid-July.
Right. So normally we say Inspire timeframe, but we'll probably get more updates on that in the July timeframe.
The July timeframe we're going to call it from now on, right? It's changing. So you alluded to something else earlier too, and it's like the elephant in the room. We can't have a discussion any longer without talking about AI. This huge AI opportunity, right? Jay was with us yesterday, $158 billion channel opportunity by 2028, probably undercalled it. He once said to me that he thought it was a hype moment around AI. He has since said that sentiment has changed, and he's pulled back from that hype moment and saying that this really is the moment for AI.
I mean, obviously at Microsoft, we think it is.
Yeah.
I think, if I think channel, right? I mean, that's what this conversation is all about. I think what'll be interesting is to see who figures out the AI opportunity and what it looks like, right? Yeah. So I don't sit on as many advisory boards as I used to now that I'm at Microsoft, but I do spend some time with a Dynamics partner. And one of the pieces of feedback that they've given me is that, hey, we go in and we do these Copilot presentations and we turn it all on and we leave, and then we come back to start to prospect, and the customer's like, great, we got Copilot. We're Copilot everywhere. We're done. Thanks for showing us, right? And so their concern was, hey, is this AI motion going to really kind of cut into our opportunity?
Yeah.
And what they've started to do is kind of dust off some of the old things. They were, like most partners, they were Exchange Shop and Office 365, SharePoint, Azure, Dynamics. They've started to go back and kind of dust off some of that SharePoint playbook and say, okay, we're going to go run around all the business departments. And now that you've got AI, let us show you how we can do like intelligent automation. Let me show you how we can build internal apps. So I think there's a path there where people are going to pick up some of that muscle. I think there's I think, app dev and AI might be easier. I know yesterday we had a session and talked about all the Copilot tool set in Studio. But there's going to be kind of a resurrection of those guys that go in and write apps at customers. I think that's going to be some super cool work that'll happen. People will go straight to hey, we're going to go build a data governance packet or practice. I don't know, at 10th magnitude, we went down that path with data, right? We hired a bunch of data scientists, and what we found out is that customers wanted to do their own data work, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to let some partner come in here and tell me what my data means.
But usually they're a mess with their data.
They're a mess. So there's probably some governance and some guidance there, but I don't know. Time will tell, but if I were building an AI partner today, boy, it would be a little more app heavy, and I'd be building that tool set.
I want to ask you another question about AI. I remember having this conversation with somebody who was on the global black belt team.
Yeah.
When Copilot first came out, and we were getting calls from every CEO saying, come in here. And it was the first time maybe in years that Microsoft was getting that level of attention.
Right.
AWS had the data estate. They had because they had the IaaS dominance, right? And that kind of shifted with AI. So that was the other thing. We're not just the technology, but I think the buying behavior and the customer persona changed for Microsoft and for Microsoft sellers.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that's impacting the marketplace business and business opportunity that you sit in?
That's a really interesting question. I can only speak to what I see. There's a couple things that I see. Luckily, I'm in Yvonne's org, and I know you've had Yvonne and ISV Success. The excitement from ISV Success participants about building AI into their apps
Interesting.
is off the charts.
Yeah.
Like, it is really, that team's a really exciting place to be right now, because you're having with every ISV you talk to, you're having that conversation about AI, but they're asking for a lot of things like, hey, help me do this. I want to build AI into my app.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. The thing that I also see in my seat is, for some reason, I get routed a lot of systems integrators who are now, hey, we're going to become a software provider, right? And AI is going to be what drives that, right? And that's a heavy lift to build, to take a systems integrator and then go spin out a software piece, right?
Yeah. I've seen it done before, but it is a heavy lift.
It is. It's a heavy lift. And most of those, historically, most of those become practice offerings, right?
That's
and
right.
they're 80%
right.
services, 20% software. And that doesn't work well in a marketplace construct today. But I think that there's a number of those types of partners that are going to shift, and they're going to become multifaceted in that way. They're going to sell software probably under a different banner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're going to try to sell it through marketplace, through channels, those types of things. They don't want the friction of, hey, I'm ABCS or, SI, and now I have the ABC SI app that I want to sell, and I want you to go sell my app for me. They're going to spin those out. But I think it's really exciting to see that component. And that's like this really interesting integration between AI and marketplace, beyond all the other cool stuff that we'll be able to do with AI in the storefront experience, right? But if you think about building a business or building a better product, it's a super exciting time.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So for our listeners and viewers watching us today, that maybe haven't taken the leap in yet, right? Maybe they're an SI, maybe they're a channel partner. You like to call them selling partners, right? The ones you work with.
We bounce that term around, right? Because it's really, how does the ISV refer to them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we sit and have these conversations. The disties will call them vendors, or resellers and vendors. And we kind of try to map to what is the broader ecosystem look. But, if you think about it, the non-ISV that wants to sell an ISV app. Yeah.
What do you say to them now to get them on board?
The channel partners?
Yeah.
It depends on, there's a lot about persona, right? Because if you think about that ecosystem's huge. It's everybody from the distributor to the VAR to the all flavor SI, local, regional, national, to the niche player, to the thousands of MSPs. On the top end, if you think about kind of the distributor and the large reseller, it's an easy way to expand your line card.
Yep.
It's some ways, say you're getting this pressure from the ISV, or depending on what's the vendor, they're telling you, hey, I want to go to marketplace. I mean, marketplace, when an ISV moves to a marketplace-driven sales motion, it drives a lot of cost out of their business, right?
Yep.
So they're getting that pressure there. So, hey, some of it's, hey, not carrot, more stick, and they're getting that from us and the hyperscalers and the ISVs. In some cases, it's hey, you can now participate in another revenue generator for you. Now, granted, sometimes your perception might be you're taking away my top line revenue and just leaving me with the margin.
Yeah, that's always been an issue, right?
Yeah, and that's going to continue to be an issue. And I think there are some that are evolving pretty quickly to figure that out. But in some partners that haven't historically been a part of the software transaction, that's new money to them. I think the other way that we kind of position it is also a little bit of, if you're not doing it, somebody else is going to do it. And we see that in some of the mega deals, or I should say large marketplace deals. The channel partner that sold the deal was not necessarily like the incumbent, right? Yeah. And the story always tells, you don't want to be that systems integrator that's in doing a lot of great systems integration work, right?
Maybe you were the digital partner of record back in the day. It's Microsoft terminology, but you were the incumbent, I guess is what I would say.
Right. You don't want to own the Azure piece and all the design development. And then you get the 11th hour and the customer's like, oh, I also need this additional firewall to run on top of Windows firewall. And I also need this data tool from NetApp. And I need this tool from New Relic and blah, blah, blah. And now I need to go aggregate those. And I'm going to go pull those from somebody who is a reseller. When you're that systems integrator, you're like, wow, I could just set all that up in Marketplace for you right now and maintain account control.
Yeah.
I think that's a big piece as well. And then the other piece that I think you just hear all the time is it's going to be the path. You're, as a Microsoft partner, you're always looking for the path to how do you build that crisp relationship with the people that carry the bag, right? Yep. And I think this is going to be that path.
What do you see from the best? You mentioned that account control, that partner that has the account control, but what else do you see from the best of the best that you work with implementing this MPO?
So I would say there's a couple things. On the high end, the larger partners, the ones that are starting to shift their go-to-market strategy and their comp plans. Yeah. So when they're starting,
comp drives behavior.
Yeah. So when they make a marketplace transaction equal to an off-marketplace transaction, and in some rare cases already a marketplace transaction more lucrative for the seller than an off-marketplace transaction, that's a huge best practice. Then I think there's a next click down where we're seeing something really interesting with a handful of partners. Again, we're only in the US today. Yeah. So I will tell you what's going on in the UK with the private preview. Like there's partners over there, like Softcat, Bytes, CompuCenter, a lot of UK names that you might just know. They're already doing marketing events, right? They're like, we're not even GA yet, and they're already out there, right? So there's a lot of that. But in the US, there's a couple partners that kind of are those larger reseller space. And what they're doing that's really interesting is they're going around and they're educating Microsoft account teams on Marketplace. And if you think about I love this because at 10th Magnitude, we did that all the time.
On Azure. Yes,
yeah, we would go do these lunch and learns, not with customer, but with Microsoft account teams to teach them about Azure. Like, I can't tell you how many times we went and taught somebody what DevOps was, right? I mean, how that led to an Azure sale. And there's a handful of these resellers that are starting to do that with Marketplace. What's really interesting is that they come in and say, hey, in reality, we've been doing Marketplace in this motion for 4 years, guys. Like, we know the Marketplace motion, you don't. And let us show you how a Marketplace sale takes place. And we'll swap in the right hyperscaler for this conversation. And I think those partners are having a lot of success, and they're using Marketplace as this wedge to build better Microsoft relationships, right? And then when they leave, that account team or that ATU or that STU, they don't think of that as a Marketplace conversation. Like, oh, this partner does Marketplace, but they also have an AI practice. They also have an Azure practice, those types of things. So I think that's one of the things I would take.
This comes down to the fundamentals, the foundational of what makes a successful partner. You did it at 10th Magnitude. You mentioned this, and then it's about building that brand and that story and being known for that one thing.
Yeah.
And being that trusted advisor to an account seller who's trying to make quota, has 100, maybe a couple hundred partners calling on them every day. If you're the quickest path to them making their number and maybe helping them get to where they need to go to, maybe a red jacket, as we used to refer to it back in the day. I mean, that's the path to success. And then you become known for that one thing. You become the partner, the go-to partner.
Right.
It's it's fascinating that you brought that up.
Yeah. There's a handful of ISVs that were early in the US preview that had some of the early deals that we already know they have the early deals in the UK preview, right? Like they've rinsed and repeated that motion, and it's pretty smart.
So, got a couple of other questions I want to ask you about multi-party offers and marketplace, but I want to flip into a personal question. I love asking each of my guests. So, Jason, you're hosting a dinner party.
Oh yeah.
Anywhere in the country, maybe anywhere in the world. In fact, since you're going to be doing a little bit of a road show, you might pick someplace else. You can invite any guest, 3 guests, in fact, from the present or the past to this amazing dinner party. Whom would you invite and why?
So here's the problem with being episode 13 and now we're at episode 200,
230
whatever.
something, I think we're at now.
I've seen this show so many times. I think the challenge is you don't want to answer this question. You don't want to take somebody else's answer, right? But I will.
No Elon Musk's, no,
Yeah.
no Bill Gates. Okay.
There's been a couple interesting, you've had a couple guests that have like pulled some themes together, right? Like you mentioned Jay, like Jay did this Canadian comedians, right?
Yeah.
So I'll do kind of a similar theme. I think Heroes of Ohio.
Heroes of Ohio.
Yeah. So
All right.
let's theme this one out. So the first one would be Thomas Edison. So
New Jersey. Come on.
no, he was born in Milan, Ohio.
I
So
did not know
every
that.
kid in Northern Ohio that you at one point, 3rd or 4th grade, you go through his boyhood home, right?
I
So
love that.
yeah. So there's like he spent this time in Milan, Ohio. Everybody. So that would be one. The next one is kind of another inventor, kind of interesting guy. When I was in elementary school, I had to do this book report on famous people from Ohio. And I picked Eddie Rickenbacker. And if you've ever known, there's an airport in Ohio named after him, but he was a World War I fighter pilot. And he was an interesting guy, race car driver. He's the guy that kind of, he's, I guess, he was the founder of the soapbox derby. But when I was doing that research, even when I was a little kid, I found this article about Eddie Rickenbacker would go hang out and smoke cigars with the Wright brothers. And so think about like the stories that he could tell, like, hey, we've got some plywood and some wax paper. Let's see if we can take that airborne, right? So I think that would be really interesting. And then the third is like the patron saint of Ohio, which would be Woody Hayes.
Okay,
So Woody Hayes, obviously the greatest football coach in history, for at least most of us. But the interesting thing about him as well, and I know you've been through a lot of like the Microsoft exec training, the bench program, that type of thing. You always have to pick your mission statement, that type of thing. And mine has always been you win with people, right? And I didn't make that up. I kind of stole it from the title of Woody Hayes' book, right? And so he wrote a book, and that was always his big thing is you win with people. So I think that would be fascinating. He was quite the character as well. So if you think about those 3 guys and Woody Hayes kind of leading the conversation, that would be a great dinner party.
I still want to ask Tom, I'm going to come along and bring dessert if you don't mind. But I want to talk to Thomas Edison about why did he come to New Jersey then?
Well, he also did a lot of his work in the state up north, which would be a really interesting conversation between him and Woody Hayes as well.
Love it.
So,
I love it. That was a fascinating list. All right. So we were at that point, right? The new beginning of the new fiscal year for Microsoft.
Yeah.
Lots of great excitement, lots of great energy about ready to happen. What advice would you have for our viewers and listeners here today on how to achieve their greatest results, how to optimize for success in this new fiscal year with Microsoft?
So kind of parting thoughts going into the Microsoft's next fiscal year, marketplace related or in general?
We can go marketplace. That's what we're here for, right?
So I think from a marketplace perspective, I think the vast majority of Microsoft partners still need to lean in and get educated.
Yeah.
Because it's not for everyone, right? And there's not one Microsoft motion that everybody jumps on. Everybody's going to jump on AI, but in their own flavor, right? I think you need to understand where the marketplace fits for you and your business, whether if you don't sell software today, you need to understand like, hey, if I get in a situation where I needed to sell software, am I going to be able to do this motion with Microsoft?
Right.
If you're a CSP, I think yesterday you had a whole session kind of talking about like the momentum in SMC.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a CSP partner, you definitely need to understand and I should make sure I'm clear on
make
CSP,
sure people know
right? So
what CSP is.
So CSP is a really fun term at Microsoft, right? So if you're a customer, you can buy Microsoft. You don't buy direct from Microsoft. You buy in a cloud solution provider contract who is sold to you by a cloud solution provider who can be a direct cloud solution provider or an indirect cloud solution provider who sells to indirect cloud solution provider resellers, right? So if you're in that mix,
that's why people say it's so complex to how to work with Microsoft.
Yeah,
yes.
But if you're in that mix and you know what CSP is, you should understand the marketplace model, because if you think about that opportunity in SMC customers could be SMB, they could be larger upper enterprise customers. They could buy direct on an enterprise contract, MPO. They could buy off a CSP contract,
That's
CSP, right? And I think those partners are going to need to really lean in and provide some value and coach those customers along the right path.
Yep. And they have an opportunity to make more money selling an ISV solution on top of the other services they're providing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's the other thing is you don't want to leave any money on the table, right?
That's right.
So, and I think that's the partners that figure that out in that space will be really critical. The other thing is that I think if you're one of those partners who you kind of been on the fray, right? You've always been in the program, but not in the program type thing, but you've got a really strong relationship with an ISV who sells a lot through Marketplace. You should lean in, right?
Yeah.
The opportunity might be coming for you, right? I think that's an important piece.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And stay, we use Ultimate Partner and the events we do to really educate people on what's been happening, right? And a third of $1 trillion in cloud budgets, right? This marketplace moment, Satya said 80% growth in $100 million cloud commitments, just in quarter to quarter growth. So if you're not looking at this as a huge opportunity area, you're missing. You need to lean in. Jason, I want to thank you for being here. So great to have you in the studio.
Glad you finally got a studio.
From
this
episode 13 to now, what a change it's been. I want to thank all of our followers, listeners, supporters of Ultimate Guide to Partnering. And for listening, tuning in, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you follow along, we'll be able to get more incredible guests like Jason to come join us. Thank you for your support. Thank you for listening to the Ultimate Guide to Partnering.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Ultimate Guide to Partnering. Hopefully this episode and all the episodes we've recorded are helping you better align your partner strategy to achieve your greatest results. So I want to ask you something. Have you implemented everything you've been learning? And are you now achieving the growth and revenue objectives that you hope to achieve? If not, it's time to take action now. Join Ultimate Partner Experience. We're building the community I've always dreamed about. With UPX, you get access to exclusive industry insights, unparalleled networking opportunities, tons of educational resources, and support from a community that shares your goals. Join us now. Visit our website, theultimatepartner.com, and sign up today.